Hi, folks. Robert Quigley here, Washington, D.C., the Money Pit Group. We're on the road to the White House. Please subscribe to the channel, put your comments below, join the conversation. Let's get the ball moving. Today, we're going to talk about term limits and campaign finance. I'm simply going to do a brief summary of the position of the Independence Party and the position of Robert Quigley. Here's the problem. We have too many leaders across the American landscape, whether we're talking about the House of Representatives, the Senate, or state houses across the country. Way too many lifelong career politicians who have accumulated a large war chest, a lot of friends, a big network, and have managed to keep themselves in office to the detriment of the rest of the country for decades. Our founders never thought that this would have been a good idea. This is a problem. The simple answer to the term limit problem is one of my proposals once we get to the White House, and it may require a constitutional amendment, is to limit the terms of every senator and every House of Representative member, as well as the president, which is already the case, to 2 terms. That's it. If we can't get our agenda addressed in 2 terms, then chances are it's probably not addressable. So it would be time to move on and let other folks have a chance to make America greater. So like I say, the problem with multi-term, never-ending term leaders is it concentrates power and money in the hands of the incumbents. And again, how does that work? A bigger war chest means that you can help other people get elected. We'll call those like-minded people. It means you can run a perpetual campaign. It also means you're going to have a much bigger network because everybody wants to feed at your trough because your bank account is really big. So this is the problem that corrupts politics. That corrupts the problem-solving targets of the government. So essentially, what do candidates need? Well, if I had to make a quick list of something that all good candidates need, it basically boils down to 6 things. They've got to have a desire to run for public office. Secondly, they've got to have a platform. A platform is another way, answers to problems. They've got to have ways and means to solve the problems of the day. The third thing they need, which is really sad, and I'll come back to it a little bit later in this video, is fundraising skills. Without a doubt, no candidate is going to succeed in the United States unless they have fantastic fundraising skills. America's all about money. American politics is all about money. Of course, the fourth thing, all candidates need to have debate and analytical skills. The fifth thing, they've got to have management skills. And above all, once you put the 5 ingredients together, the candidate must have a highly competent team. No one can solve these problems by themselves. Every problem facing America in every public office needs a team. And that's just the minimum to get the job done. So let's move on. We're still thinking about the term limit problem, and we're going to move into the campaign finance problem. When America lived in the pre-automobile and pre-plane stage, well, folks were living in isolated communities across America. Even though the folks of those days did not want perpetual representatives, it made a little more sense to have people stay in D.C. longer, simply because it was a pain to get from the isolated community over to D.C., and it was very difficult to keep abreast of widely dispersed, separated bits of your community that did not communicate that often. So in a sense, it made more sense in those days. But now we're living in the post-automobile and post-plane stage. We can disseminate information to every computer and iPhone and cell phone on the planet with the click of one button. It travels at light speed. We can literally inform the entire connected planet in a matter of seconds. It's as simple as that, folks. There are no more isolated communities. We know what's going on everywhere, and if we don't know in the front of our heads, we can do a Google search and we can find out very quickly what's going on. So there's just no sense to have lifelong politicians is the point there. We've got to stop the perpetual in-session Congress issue. This is another problem in Washington, D.C. Congress is in session basically from September until the following August. They take August off to go back home. It's just crazy. The only thing it does is it allows members of Congress to feed at the trough of lobbying money. They build these massive networks. Lobbies are trying to get their members uh, narrow slice monopoly interest enacted and protected by law. Everyone's trying to promote their own little piece of the American pie through this lobbying year-round governmental system. It makes no sense. We need to have our representatives and our senators back home as much as possible, working in their communities. They need to be working in businesses in their communities. In days past, they were doctors and lawyers and shopkeepers and so forth. We need people that are mostly connected to their home districts, and then they come to DC, they review the laws that need to be reviewed, and then votes are taken. But this idea of keeping them in session perpetually just makes Washington, D.C. an never-ending circus. So what's the result if we introduce term limits and we change the focus of the way Congress operates? Well, we're going to reduce the influence of lobbyists. We're going to get better laws, aka better solutions to the problems that we face today. And we've got a heck of a lot of problems. I refer you to my many other videos in this series that talks about those problems separately. So ultimately, we want to end the circus in Washington, D.C. Next, we're going to move on to campaign finance. Campaign finance is a major problem in the United States because unless you are a great fundraiser, you've got a lot of friends that are very wealthy or a lot of money in your pocket, you're pretty much locked out of the American political process. So it goes without saying, and what we've been seeing is every president that has come to office has been a top tier fundraiser. There's no question about it. Now let's look at the three different categories of fundraising, and then we will talk about the different candidates and presidents that use these categories. You have the small donor category, which by far is the best. So here we're talking about millions upon millions of donors who are throwing in $5, $10, $20, maybe $50, $100 into the bucket. And every time somebody donates to your campaign, they have a vested interest in voting for you. So this model was used quite successfully by Obama. He did very well. That was the reason why he got into the White House. Never underestimate it. It was that fact and that fact alone. On the next category, big donors. Big donors are the institutions, the companies, the deep-pocketed pools of assets across America. This is the Hillary Clinton model. Whatever she said about representing female voters and coming from the grassroots, don't believe it for a minute. By the time she ran for president, she had already lived off of the coattails of Bill Clinton for decades. They knew every donor there was to know in the country. She was running a campaign off of big money donations, which of course means that's very dangerous because any candidate who goes to the White House with big money donations only are beholden to the big money donors. They're not looking after your interest or my interest, the small business guy's interest, the little guy in the street's interest. No, that's not what they're doing. They are protecting the entrenched interest of society because without the small donors and without their own deep pockets, they have to do the bidding of their masters, as we all know. And now the third category is the Trump category. I'm not going to talk about Trump's crimes today, but I'm just specifically talking about campaign finance. As we all know, Trump was a very wealthy man before he entered the White House, and he used his real estate fortune pretty much to fund his campaign. No doubt he also garnered a lot of donations from the extreme right wing of the Republican Party, but nevertheless, he had a massive advantage going into the campaign because he was extremely wealthy. Now, another person that falls into that category would have been Ross Perot back in the 90s. Ross Perot, another billionaire, and he was too much of a businessman because when the clouds looked gray, he cut his losses, which is not what you want to do as a political candidate. When you're in it, like we're in it, we're in it to the very end. We're either going to win it or we're going to lose it, but we're in it until the end. So those are the three categories of campaign finance in terms of raising money. And we can all see the army of small donors is going to take us the furthest. What's the result of this kind of system? Well, the result is, because so much of the effort has to go into raising money, is we have got two dominant political parties which dominate the fundraising arena of politics. They know the donors. They know the phone calls to make. They know the emails to send. And since most candidates are running for office, whether you're talking about the state level or the federal level, and they're not as rich as Trump, they're going to have to rely upon the party mechanism to get the funding to pay for their campaign. And here we go again. From the very start of that process, we have candidates that are never going to operate in the best interest of Americans. They are, in fact, going to operate in the best interest of their political parties, because those are the ones that are funding their campaigns. So what are the solutions? Well, before I list a couple of solutions, just let me finish up at this point. If we had to describe American politics in a very simple visual term, I often refer to the whole fundraising, campaigning process of getting elected to public office as a battle for the scrum. Now, those of you who are soccer players and rugby players, you know exactly what I'm talking about. A scrum is where the parties on each team, they lock themselves arm to arm. The referee throws the ball in the middle, or one of the players throws the ball in the middle, and each side is trying to kick it around to get control of it. That, in essence, is the Democrat and Republican Party. That's the scrum. And as you can see, in that kind of system, where we've got these two parties fighting heavily over the big donors in the society, because they're not fighting over little donors. They look at little donors as just a side piece of the whole financing campaign. They're trying to get the Wall Streets, the California, San Francisco, Silicon Valley technology giants. They're trying to get the old industry donors. They're going after the big money. That is the political battle for the scrum. We don't want that, folks. We want millions upon millions upon millions of little guy donors. So what are the solutions? Well, there are two very simple solutions to the campaign finance problems. One is to let the government finance the campaigns. This happens in many places on the planet, many West European countries. France is the most recent notable exception. Any candidate who gets at least 5% of the vote, them and their party, gets their campaigning expenses paid and or reimbursed by the government. The reason why they do that is they want many more parties and the overall views of the society represented in the government house, the Senate, the representatives, their parliament, and that's how they do it. Now, another very simple non-monetary way to achieve a very similar result is to mandate that anybody who meets a very low minimum threshold, it will be placed on the ballots for presidential election. What we have now is we've got states operating different rules in terms of which candidates can wind up on the ballot. And again, this is a system that was created by both the Republicans and the Democrats to eliminate the competition. And the result is, so far, we have 175 years of poor performance by both the Democrats and the Republicans. So there you have it, folks. A quick primer on term limits in campaign finance. Obviously, you can see the way I'm presenting the video and the attitude I'm taking, where I fall on these particular issues. So join the conversation, subscribe to the channel, add your comments, let me know where I'm right, let me know where I'm wrong. Do me a favor and spread the word as widely as possible. We have a new website up. It's called robertquigleyforpresident.com. Please refer to that and refer it to as many folks as you can. I've put up a brand new GoFundMe campaign. So again, it's Robert Quigley for President. Find that GoFundMe campaign and add your dollars and nickels, dimes, and pennies, whatever you can afford. It's much needed. And of course, in addition to that, we have our YouTube channel where we will continually put up new videos as the issues of the day develop and as we progress through the campaign. So with that, until we meet again.